What's going on, everyone? It's Justin here, and today I'm going to give you a review of the brand new Porsche Taycan, the turbo version. A huge thanks to Porsche Langley Center for letting me take this car for a couple days. I'm going to leave a link to all the information down below, but it was one of my first car videos, and I'm someone who likes cars and I want to learn more about them. And Porsche has always been a brand that I've been a fan of, and when I first saw the concept of this car in 2015, I was very interested by it, but of course, a concept is always just a concept. So when they announced that this car was going to go on sale, I was a huge fan of it just based off its looks. So before I take you guys around the road, I wanted to show you around the car itself some of the exterior features as well as the interior detail and technology. So the first thing you're really going to notice is that the car has a nice and aggressive futuristic look. You have the 4-point LED headlight system as well as the air curtains on each side that almost gives it somewhat of a reminiscence to Formula E cars. Because you don't have an engine in this car, you also have an 81-liter luggage compartment on the front, or what you would like to call a frunk. The door handles also automatically extend and recess, and you also have a charging port on each side of the car. As you move over to the back of the car, you're going to notice the singular streamlined LED strip that goes all the way across, similar to what Porsche has been doing in their most recent lineups. This vehicle also has Porsche's active aerodynamics, which means the spoiler is actually in 3 different stages and will pop up depending on the speed that you're going. But otherwise, I'm sure you guys had a chance to take a look in the beginning montage. The car's look really does speak for itself. It is a relatively simplistic design, but with so many customization options when it comes to the rim as well as the color, you're still able to add a very personalized touch like you would with any other Porsche car. Everywhere we brought this car, you would see people just looking over, whether it was at the stoplight or just in a parking lot. It really does draw a ton of attention. I think what is equally as impressive though is the interior, both in terms of comfort and technology integration. I think the first thing you're going to notice is that the car really does still embrace the character and what Porsche is really known for in their interior layout. Traditionally, there are quite a few buttons in the center console area, which are all physical buttons, but in this case, it has fully embraced the futuristic technology approach. There's literally no buttons in the front panel, and in fact, you have 3 different displays with the option to even add a 4th one on the passenger side. The main screen in front of the dash is a 16.8-inch curved display, as well as some touch capacitive buttons on both the left and right side for lighting as well as your chassis. The main display is a 10.9-inch touchscreen, and even the climate controls as well as all of your other information is displayed in a touch setting that also gives a bit of haptic feedback when you press it. The other way to control your main screen is to utilize the center console screen as a touchpad to navigate the different settings and menus. Personally, I was a little bit skeptical with the idea of having a touchscreen for every single thing, including climate controls and volume, but I will say the menus are very well laid out and easy to navigate, and the touchscreen's responsiveness was overall quite easy to use. Aside from the car's main navigation and multimedia, you also have a menu that allows you to control both the drive, assist, the trip, and comfort. The drive controls some of the chassis as well as the aerodynamic options, and the assist allows you to enable things such as lane keep assist and also the parking assist. Comfort allows you to control some of the interior settings such as LED lights, and the control screen below allows you to change things such as navigation, music, set up your calls, as well as temperature. From here, you're also able to monitor your range and also change the volume, but one thing I would have liked is to see some physical buttons, even if it was just a few. The good thing though is that you can still control the volume of your music from the steering wheel. What you will also notice is that the main gears are nowhere to be found in the center console. It is actually located to the right side of the steering wheel, and from there you can control the drive, reverse, and park, and obviously because it is an electric car, there are no individual gears. One thing that Porsche has done to every single vehicle to stick to their racing heritage is put the push start button on the left side of the driver. Otherwise though, what you're going to expect and notice is that the quality and build of the entire interior is amazing. And in the back you do have some space as well with the option to fold the seats down, but I will say in terms of legroom, if you're a little bit taller, it may not be the most. The total size of the rear cargo is 366 liters. You can also access your mode dials from the right side of the steering wheel that allows you to go from Sport, Standard, and also Sport Plus. There is also range mode that extends the range of the vehicle, of course, but it also limits your speed to 110 kilometers an hour. So in terms of my review of the interior, I will say it is impressive. Every little thing and detail is very well done, the leather is extremely high quality, and in general what you would expect out of a vehicle of this price point. So now let's take the car on the road, where I'm going to talk a bit more about like how it feels to drive it, as well as some of the technologies that Porsche has integrated to improve that driving experience. So now we're on the road with the Taycan, and I've got to say the car ride is just so smooth. I sat in the passenger seat for like 6 hours yesterday, and the seats and everything are so comfortable. The car just feels like it's floating on the road. It also makes a sound that kind of adds to that effect. It almost reminds me a bit of like the bullet train in Tokyo. It just feels like you're coasting along on here. And there's a few different things that allow it to be so smooth. There's the air ducts on the front that pass air through to reduce the turbulence by sending the air over the wheels. There's also the air suspension. And another feature of this car is that with its two-way transmission, it is able to adapt the amount of power that it uses on the front and the rear end, depending on which mode you're using it in, to extend both the power and the range. So the biggest question I've been getting when I asked over on Instagram is, how does this compare to a Tesla? And that is like a very common tech answer. I know a lot of guys in the tech industry have Teslas. I personally never really been that interested in getting one, but I do have like a fascination and appreciation for electric cars and how that is gonna shape the future. And companies that weren't previously in the car industry have also jumped into the market. We saw Sony at CES kind of concept something. Dyson also worked on a car for a little bit, but pulled the plug on that project, literally. And in terms of how it compares to a Tesla, I feel like it's for a different market. This car is very expensive. You're gonna pay for that logo on the front. The design is much prettier than the Tesla in my opinion, but it is still somewhat like an electric car for people who love to drive their cars, some sport driving and stuff like that, because you don't have autopilot on this. You don't have like the automated driving and features that people love to talk about on the Tesla. You're supposed to drive this thing. And it really does add to the fun experience. You get the effect of the electric car, but at the same time, kind of the character that you expect out of a car like this. But in terms of price point, if you're trying to compare to like a Model 3 or even a Model S, is something that costs $200,000 at its highest point and starts at $100,000, I just feel like it really comes down to what you want and what type of car person you are. There's not really a way to say which one is better than the other. Personally, I would obviously go with the Taycan over a Tesla, but the price is definitely also something to factor. And also the charging network that Tesla has developed over the years has become very advanced and kind of like a large ecosystem with it. So in terms of the specs, the one that we're driving right now is the Turbo. It's the second model from the highest, and it has a horsepower of 625 equivalent. Obviously you count in kilowatt hours in terms of electric cars, but the Turbo S is actually able to have a maximum horsepower equivalent of 750, which is pretty crazy for an electric car. From the first day, we drove this car about 360 kilometers. Most of it was on a highway, and it was a combination of driving it both in the range, the normal, as well as a sport mode in order to ensure that we were able to make it. And I would say in terms of range, we were able to get just around 360 kilometers, which is relatively close to their advertised range. And we do expect that they may make like a higher range model in the future as well. But for the Turbo model and for what we were using it for, I have to say I was pretty impressed that it was able to get very close to its rating. And if you were to ride this thing in range mode for like the entire day, you should be able to hit 400 no problem. So in terms of the steering, it is like a very responsive, but also gives you kind of that sport, like light stiffness feel to it. I'm driving it in normal mode right now, and it just feels so nice. The brakes do feel a little bit sensitive, and I think with any electric car you get that like instant throttle response. And as someone who is in the tech industry but hasn't had as much experience with electric cars but has a huge fascination for them, I think it's really cool to see a company that has like the history in racing like Porsche make something like this that still sticks to their roots in some ways, essentially released a car that looks identical to the concept that they announced a few years ago. Obviously when it comes to practicality, it's not going to be like anything crazy. It has the front trunk, which is small, as well as the back trunk, but the cargo size is enough to fit a lot of camera gear and some luggage and stuff, but definitely not as much as like a full-size hatchback. And contrary to what a lot of people may think, this car is not a hatchback. And I would say if there's like a very similar comparable to the Porsche lineup, it would be the Panamera. It's a four-door car that is kind of like a bit of a crossover, but those have been very popular, and I feel like this is the car that has gotten the most hype aside from Tesla in just the past couple years. The car is also very quiet. It does a great job of masking out the outside noise, and the only thing you really hear if you have the electric sound on is that, and you kind of just feel like you're in your own space, but at the same time have this car that from the outside is so beautiful and fast. And as someone who's always wanted a Panamera, just because I like the practicality of like a hatchback, but also a nice sports car, this is something that I could see myself maybe wanting to save up for in the future when Victoria has a better infrastructure for electric charging. The sunroof is like a single piece of curved glass, and it would be cool in the future to see them do something like electrochromatic glass, like what we've seen with McLaren, as well as in airplanes, the Boeing Dreamliner, to be able to adjust like the amount of light that it lets in, and even have the option to black it out completely if you want to just have like kind of a dark setting with your interior LED lights. I just gotta say though, I've had so much fun with this car. It's so smooth, very comfortable, but if you really want to push it, it still has that great sport feel to it. And this right here is the turbo model, and in Canada it specs out to be just around $200,000, and I believe it has a starting price in the US of just around $150,000. Some other pieces of tech to mention is that you can charge your phone wirelessly inside of the glove box. It just clips to the end, and although it's not the fastest charging, it's still better than nothing. And I also noticed that the ports inside this car, at least the model that we've driven, is 2 USB Type-C. Another feature of this car is that it can also charge very fast. It is 270 kilowatts at its maximum, and you can also install a 240 volt NEMA outlet in your house. But the Porsche network is starting to expand, and that will allow you to charge your entire car in just 30 minutes. The battery inside this car is 800 volts, but I think at the end of the day, what's really important is in everyday real world use, how much range it is able to get. And from our experiences, we were able to get a good amount of range, about 400 kilometers of driving if we were conservative with it. And I feel like that's what you can expect out of a car like this. A lot of times when you've got a lot of power, you just don't get as much range. But in this case, it is a fully electric car. The air suspension paired with like the aerodynamics of the wheel well and blocking out the turbulence just really gives it a feel in combination with the sound of the car floating around the road just like a plane. I think there's really no other way to describe it. We've been in some pretty rough areas in terms of the roads, and it's handled it perfectly fine. So we just returned the car at Porsche Center Langley, and I had a great time taking out the Taycan Turbo for the weekend. A huge thanks to them for letting me try it out, and it's just cool to come back to the showroom and take a look, kind of like the generational evolution of Porsche vehicles, from their newest performance cars to the vintage ones on that side, and also the future, which is going to be electric cars, and the Taycan being a fully electric car and Porsche's first. The technology is amazing. You've got the digital interior, but I think the most difficult part is having a great driving experience with performance, speed, and also range in mind for practicality all into one vehicle, and the Taycan definitely had that. Just look at this stuff here. You've got a car right there that is worth about $500,000, but you've also got the Porsche Panamera, which is personally a car that I think would be like the ultimate daily driver with the hatchback, the performance, as well as the interior. So as someone who is interested in cars, it's just cool to look around. You've got great colors, great interiors, and yeah, if you guys want to see me do some more car videos in the future, make sure you subscribe to the channel, drop a like on this video, and leave a comment down below, and I'll see you all in the next one.